So Narendra Modi came in with his massive majority that India had not seen for probably about 30 years, where there were only coalition governments, one after the other, struggling to stay in power, had to cobble with 20, 30 different parties and get their support, some large, some small, and all kinds of things. So that ended, and we had a person who was so popular, and which India, everybody or almost everybody in India look forward to as this great deliverer, this great Messiah, and and he got the massive mandate that India could give, and as well as complete majority, at least in the Lok Sabha. So we on his party, on his own, probably without even needing any allies or any other parties, though there were allies who were also supporting him. So with that, everybody was rejoicing, celebrating, and looking forward to the great days ahead, the Ache Din that were promised under Modi, right? And let's analyze what have we seen now. It's almost 7 years since Modi has come to power. So let's analyze his economic policies, economic accomplishments, and in general we might touch upon the other accomplishments and other things as well, but our focus in this video obviously is primarily on the economy, right? So what are the off the gate, the amazing positives that we were fed up of with the Congress were kind of from day one, it was a given that those were completely fixed, right? Number one is Parivarvad, where Congress was only about one family party, whether it is that family or those people, or half the people who are like the leaders of Congress, all are sons and daughters of somebody, one or the other guy, and those were the only people it seemed as if can go move forward or gets anywhere in Congress. So this type of a what do you call, party management. And same was the story with most of the third front parties as well. They are all third front, or whatever I call it, third front, like the non-Congress, non-BJP, right? Whatever front they may be, third, fourth, fifth, anything, doesn't matter. So they're all family parties, majority of them. There might be one or two which may not be. Probably you can say like an AIADMK in Tamil Nadu is not a family party. Somebody might argue like that. But majority, or even the Communist Party in Kerala, but most of them are family parties, with one guy who is like the patriarch or whatever, and all his kids and his whole family getting tickets and getting positions and posts, and they become the chief minister and they become everything. This is the history or story of India and all these other parties, which clearly was finished the minute BJP and Modi came to power. And BJP, none of this such nonsense happens, luckily for India, under under BJP, right there. Second one that is clearly eliminated is corruption, right? In Congress we had, starting from Indira Gandhi, corruption from the bottommost to the topmost leader, including like Rajiv Gandhi, accused of taking bribes in Bofors, and the millions, dozens of cases on Sonia Gandhi, on all her shady dealings and bribery and whatnot in various scams, right? So it did not. And even Narsim Rao, for that matter, was accused of taking bribe from Harshad Mehta, I guess, I don't know. So things like that. So in the Congress party, I guess it had become a culture that corruption, if you are not corrupt, there must be something wrong with that person, right? And the corruption was so widespread and so rampant. That is something that again under BJP, it doesn't mean there is no corruption, but at least at the top levels the amount of corruption is really very less. And Modi comes from a very humble background. He has a very clean image, and he is no charges of corruption or no charges of making money. Just look at his lifestyle, look at how his mom lives. It is simply amazing. All of us Indians have to be proud that such a person from such a humble beginning is able to become the prime minister just by hard work. And also and his track record of delivery in Gujarat, which we have all seen and heard, was another plus point for him. So Parivarvad eliminated, corruption reduced to almost zero, if not totally zero, right? Then the third one was inflation, which is another major problem under Manmohan Singh government. So as soon as Modi took over, luckily for him as well, the oil prices, which were over $120 a barrel for crude oil, suddenly collapsed from that price to like almost $30 a barrel, right? And which was a huge boon for Modi, and as well, and that kind of helped him, though he did not necessarily reduce the price of petrol in India so drastically, but it helped him in controlling the inflation in India, and he has done a fairly good job of keeping inflation low until recently in in India. So that is another plus point that came along with this. And then the other thing that was a complaint with Congress is inaction on every front, right? Even after the 26/11 Mumbai terrorist attacks, all the Congress party would do is send dossiers to Pakistan and plead with them that please do something, take action, please, we'll beg you, we'll come, I will have tea with you, come have biryani with us, let's play cricket, whatever, probably not play cricket, but everything else. And and please take some action and stop this, right? This is all they could do. They could not take any serious tough action against Pakistan for continuously sending terrorists into India, and for following this policy of all kinds of creating terrorism and violence and and divisions within India. So that is another area where Modi has taken a firm action against Pakistan. He has demonstrated it multiple times by surgical strike and later on by Balakot. We can discuss merits, demerits of these things in another video, but definitely this is a positive where the old inaction of Congress, not just in the case of Pakistan, even with policy movement, even with policy paralysis was another thing that was a common term under Manmohan, that has been solved under Modi, right? So these were all some of the positive. And the other part was Manmohan Singh wouldn't answer questions or never kind of opened up about all this corruption and didn't rein in his ministers, any of that. And that's also something that changed with Modi. Modi is he speaks to the people, though he doesn't talk to the press, because he has got bad blood with them, and long soured relationship between him and the press, which is not a topic of this video. Again, we won't go there. So but anyway, but at least he speaks to the people multiple times a day, in hours and hours of various speeches, and not just inside India. Even when he visits other countries, it is almost invariably there is a speech at the end of whatever event or stay in any country that he goes to. So that's another aspect that was a negative in Congress under Manmohan Singh, that's been fixed with Modi, right? And plus, of course, his victories all across India, and also energizing the youth, bringing them to feel proud about India, making them feel proud about being a Hindu, right? And the heritage of India and the values of India, and as well as demonstrating, talking about these things on world stage, all over, wherever he goes, like including the Yoga Day. These are all the great positives that Modi has brought about. And also you can say winning all these states, at least until recently, probably since 2019 or so, he might have lost a few states across India, but until then majority of India was under BJP. So, and that is also another significant accomplishment of Modi and his brand of politics, and his talk of development and understanding the aspirational India that we are today, right? So that is another amazing positive as well. So Modi had all the things going great for him. He had the majority within India. He had the most of the states, under his control. He had international countries rolling out red carpets, welcoming him all over the place. And he had a decently vibrant economy, though there were some issues when he started, and the world was looking forward to India becoming a developed country, and India kind of arriving at the world stage and taking things forward and becoming the next or a new superpower within the next 10, 20, whatever, odd years, and becoming a major player, starting quickly in terms of world politics and on the world stage, right? So that these were all the positives that he started with, and that he has been able to accomplish most of the other ones until today, right? So this is as far as some of the positives or major positives. Of course, there are many positives, more as well, which may not be as major as this, but surely there are definitely more items than this. Right, like for example, I will give you just to list a couple of them. The way he awards the prizes to really people, like this Padma Bhushan or whatever, all these earlier they were just being given to chamchas of the Congress party. Rather than that, he finds poor people who really served the community, who really did something for the nation, and gives them the prize, rather than just somebody who licked your boot or who wrote some article in your prize and things like that. That's another huge positive. Then our leaders of India who were sidelined under the Congress party because they only wanted to further their own name, that is the Nehru family name, though they call themselves Gandhi, which is again a fake fraud, and they have cheated India by taking on this surname which they have no connection with. The Nehru family was the only important one, whereas Modi has restored the name of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Subhash Chandra Bose, Ambedkar, many others who also needed the limelight, which they had not gotten. They are coming to the surface, and people are getting to know about them. So these are examples of many positives, right? So we can again go on and on, but like I said, we will try to keep our focus more on economy rather than all these other issues, right? So like I said, I have listed a whole bunch of positives that have happened under Modi, right? But then also we shall talk of expectations that we had before we go into how he has handled the economy, and what are the positives there and what are the negatives there as well, as we go along in this analysis and conversation, right? So now let's talk about the expectation. So these were all great things that we listed. See, but we had come through in India for the last 3 prime ministers, like we had discussed before in this video. Narsim Rao, who brought in capitalistic reforms in and allowed privatization, allowed private companies, and created in the India which was the software superpower of the world, right? We had become the number one in IT services, in IT, the world over. There is no competition. There is nobody even is second. You can say United States is first, but still in IT services, India is number one, and there is no number two. Or there might be small ones like Philippines or whoever else, Vietnam maybe, but they don't even come close in terms of what India has been able to capture. Maybe even Eastern Europe a little bit, right? But they're all very small, minuscule, nowhere in comparison to what India. This was what Narsim Rao did for India. With Vajpayee, we had seen massive disinvestment and public sector units shut down, taking bold action like the nuclear bomb testing and items like these, right? As well as start of infrastructure project. But under Manmohan Singh, like we discussed, massive push to modernize Indian infrastructure, all the airports, metros, malls, multiplexes, all these various things that we talked about. So this was the kind of development that we had seen before Modi came to power. So the expectation that we had, at least I did, with Modi is not about Hindutva and not about having, giving befitting reply to Pakistan. Yes, we would have wanted all that, but beyond all this is to take the pace of development that Narsimha Rao, Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh had done in these areas. One is reforms for all sectors. Second one, shutting down all the PSUs and all these government banks and whatnot, railways and everything, or privatizing them, if not shutting down totally Air India, all these stuff. And third one, taking infrastructure construction to the next level, even beyond what Manmohan Singh was able to accomplish in a coalition government. Right, because Modi had that kind of goodwill, that kind of mandate. So our expectation, or my expectation at least, probably not in most of yours it looked like, was that these things are going to now go at a lightning pace, or at a much faster pace, bullet train pace, than what they used to, where we had made starts under Manmohan Singh, under Narsimha Rao and Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh to an extent. Right, so that was at least what the expectation was when he started. So we will now get into what really transpired. Were these expectations met? Where did we instead go towards? And we can talk about more of those in the further analysis of the handling of the economy by Modi, right? And we will start with the very first thing. Economy kind of had already started to dwindle, or started to go towards the downward trajectory when Manmohan Singh was about to leave. And who does Modi appoint as the finance minister, which is one of the key positions in a scenario like this? Right off the bat, when he started in his first term, he appoints Arun Jaitley, who is a lawyer who knows nothing about economics, and as his finance minister. So right then off the bat, it wasn't a good omen. Yeah, Arun Jaitley might have been a close friend of Modi, a very confidant. We can understand all that, but was he the right fit for in a finance portfolio? That I am not really sure, and it did not give us a lot of confidence even to start with. But we still were hopeful, and because we have heard what Modi's intentions were, what his Vikas plan was, what his Achhe Din were about. So given all that, we continued to be hopeful and were waiting and watching what kind of steps and actions would Modi take in terms of reviving economy and doing the Vikas and developing India that we all voted him to do. Hi folks, so we will continue discussing the 7 years of Modi government and how the economy fared and what the policies were, as well as we will talk about the future of India under Modi, and then obviously also Shah and Yogi, because they seem to be the future of the BJP, at least as of right now. Those are the real faces that we see as the successors of Modi. And we also see that there is really no opposition in India, or almost nil, who can challenge Modi or his popularity at this point. I don't see that happening in 2024 either, or barring some miracle or some really major shift in politics, which I don't expect. Otherwise, I feel that at least for the next, maybe at least 10 years, if not more, BJP and Modi and his successors are almost unquestioned in India. And I don't see a Rahul Gandhi ever, standing up to be a person who can challenge the BJP. I think Congress story is over, their history, unless they can reinvent themselves and, change million things inside them, or a dozen things inside them at least, which I doubt is ever going to happen in terms of parivarvad, corruption, getting rid of all these old faces. I don't think Congress is a party that's capable of doing that kind of change. So I don't see any opposition, unless I don't see any new ones forming either, like a AAP type of a deal, which happened for Delhi. So it's these three folks. So anyway, coming back. So the expectations were really high when Modi took over, especially on the economic front. We discussed a lot of his positives, and we also discussed that Arun Jaitley becoming the finance minister was a disappointment to an extent, because we were expecting a really sharp face, like how Narsim Rao put a Manmohan Singh in, and in order to carry out the reforms. So in any case, so as we were discussing, Manmohan Singh had left the economy at around 6% or 5% odd GDP growth. But despite all that, there was massive inflation in India and a massive bubble that had already been created by huge money printing after the 2008 crisis, causing to massive inflation both in stock market, in real estate market, as well as in food prices, which Modi had gotten the food price part at least under control. But the banks were all in very shaky shape, because they had made all these loans with so many NPAs forming, and the overall economy as such was kind of prime in a bubble spot and needed very careful and deft handling and very aggressive reforms in order to bring it back on track. But unfortunately, what we got were not that, and the real opposite of the kind of reforms we were expecting. We were expecting capitalistic changes to be made, but instead we started seeing socialism adopted, widespread, even to the extent of going towards like a Indira Gandhi style of government is what we have seen over the last 7 years under Modi. Not just economically in terms of socialism, in terms of every kind of freebie scheme that you can think of, free electricity, free gas, free water, free food, free food grain, everything is free. And that is typically what we had seen under Indira Gandhi type of things. There were hardly any serious capitalistic reforms until probably recently. The only thing to me that were notable were the recent agriculture bill and the labor bill. We'll talk about them in a little later, but we are talking from the beginning of 2014 now. So the reforms that were, I don't know, they call it reforms, but these are not really reforms. These are socialistic interventions into the economy, which are basically the demonetization, wherein the government comes in and abolishes or bans 95% of the currency. I don't know, this might be impressive for voters to get votes, but economically this is a disaster. And we have seen consequences of this. And as we saw, neither is any black money or anything coming back, because the guys who have that kind of black money knows ways to work around this system. So I don't know what they were thinking. And this has caused a huge disaster in the Indian economy. And that started kind of the rolling down the chain, where constantly we have seen lower and lower GDP growth rates for the last 8 or 9-10 quarters. This is way before lockdown or anything came. So ever since Modi took over, given that there were already so many problems in the economy, we needed rapid capitalistic economic reforms on one side, and on the other side, amazing or awesome push to infrastructure development. We saw announcements of a bullet train, and then a Navi Mumbai airport, and then smart cities and Dholera, and what else was that? 14-lane highway between Delhi and Meerut. So large pronouncements were made, but I don't think any of these projects 7 years down the line have even materialized. And unlike the case with Manmohan Singh, where I vividly remember he took over office in say 2003, and by 2008, within his first term, the Bangalore airport was ready and open. Right, and within 2005 is probably when the construction started. Within no time, I'm not saying that under Modi no construction or no infrastructure has been created. Many of the stalled projects started by Manmohan, like the bridges and tunnels and whatnot, have completed. But we are talking giant infrastructure that takes us to the next level beyond where Manmohan Singh had left us. Right? And like Beijing built an airport in Beijing, 100 million capacity. Take a look at that. Take a look at the bridge they built between Macau and Hong Kong, for example. Sorry, not Macau. Yes, is it Hong Kong? Or, yeah. What do you call? So that it's like a 50-mile bridge over the ocean, so that folks don't have to take a ferry or something to get there. See, these are the kind of projects. And look at what Dubai did in terms of opening the Louvre Museum. They're doing an Expo 2020. This is the kind of construction we were expecting from Modi. But I am sorry to say that in 7 years, I have not seen anything of this kind of a stature, developed at all as far as infrastructure is concerned. And coming to the push in terms of shutting down PSUs, public sector units, privatizing them, closing down public sector banks, they in fact get a negative rating because they have done none of this. Right, all the public sector banks have only become bigger and bigger, and more and money has been poured into them, and they have been merged and whatnot, making even bigger monoliths, which are like a dinosaur. We're making losses like crazy. And as well as like even Air India, that they kept on announcing, I'm going to privatize, I'm going to sell it off, and blah blah blah, and nothing has happened 7 years since. And they are not willing to make the necessary cuts, whether it is to lay off people, whether it is to salvage the company and sell it in scrap, because I don't see I don't see any serious buyer, a serious businessman wanting to buy Air India, because it is a junk. It is worth hardly anything. Yeah, there might be some small things in there which are worth something, but the majority of it is just scrap. Right, so only thing, you have to scrap it and sell it for salvage. That is the only way I see how you can sell this thing. But Modi government, I don't see, is bold enough to take such a call. They are just kicking the can down the road and postponing and hoping that somebody will buy it. So this has been a pathetic failure in terms of any disinvestment really. There might have been some small things done, but we are talking about major accomplishments. Which with a 300 or 250 whatever odd seats majority, if Narsim Rao and Vajpayee could do so much with no majority, imagine what Modi could have been able to do. But unfortunately, these were not his focus. He has been more focused on socialism, and which has helped him win elections, no doubt, than in moving towards reforms and capitalism. The other reform was GST. Again, I wouldn't classify this as a major capitalistic reform. Yeah, it is some accounting, maybe helps in accounting and simplifies the process maybe, and things like that. But I don't think that this is something that is going to make business more productive, that's going to help in creating more businesses, it's going to make it easy for businesses to run in India and things like that. See, in this area, there was a lot of talk about Startup India, Stand Up India, this India, that India, a whole bunch of programs, Smart City India, New India, all kinds of things, Make in India. But I don't know, these are all nothing more than talk on paper and just slogans and things to do speeches about, or probably, do seminar and get some kudos. But as far as in terms of reality is concerned, I am not sure that these are, and even like India went up in some ease of doing business index. These are all just show and gimmick rather than anything of substance, is really what it is turning out to be. And we will see in another few years, we will see that in reality, in action as well. Yes, there have been some sectors like the mobile phone where some manufacturing has picked up, but that's more because India is a large market for mobile phones. So companies find it easier or better if they can produce it here than any or assemble it here, not really produce, right, than any big innovation happening or anything like that in that space from India as such, right? The innovation, the everything is from outside of India. They may do some assembly here. Hopefully that will change. I'm not negative about it, but at least in the last 7 years, it has not been such a great or remarkable change in terms of manufacturing that is started in India or anything like that. And the policies, though sounded very promising in the beginning, we are more leaning towards socialism, and the entire style of Modi functioning seems to be almost like a copy or a replica of what Indira Gandhi used to do in India, right? Do socialism, all kinds of freebies, go to all over India, wear some fancy dress, do some dance with the tribals and whatnot. I used to remember watching these as a kid. When you go to a movie, they would show you newsreel before the movies of Indira Gandhi, and you are forced to watch it as while waiting for the movie. And this is what I used to see, or dance she went to some tribe and danced with them in their costume and whatnot, and gave freebie here and freebie there and freebie everywhere. And then what is the kind of functioning? Like, all she had were sycophants who were all chamchas, nobody could stand up to her, nobody could talk to her. She was like the boss, and all the others were like duds who had hardly any brain, would just take orders. And Modi's cabinet is honestly, other than maybe Amit Shah, there is nothing different. It is all just yes men who don't have any individual ideas of their own. They just listen to whatever directions from Modi and execute it, right? And then they try to come on television and pretend like, oh, they're very smart and they came up with something. But really, I don't see any sharp people. Maybe, yeah, there might be. I'm not saying they're totally dumb or anything, but who have some individual ideas, thoughts, personality, charisma, who can bring things or make changes. Everything has to be run by Modi, and everything has to be approved by Modi. That seems to be the way the ministries are functioning, right? Without Modi, nobody can do anything independently, which is the complete opposite of how things were under Vajpayee, at least in my observation, right? And so this is only a freebie, politics is all that goes on. And then these ministries are all just yes men, rubber stamps for Modi's intention. And even the president's office, while Vajpayee appointed Abdul Kalam as our president, who's like everybody had respect for, we could all look up to him. Modi has appointed another rubber stamp, just like Indira Gandhi used to be. Yeah, sure, he's a Dalit and he's an RSS man and all that, I understand. But you need somebody whom we can look up to, who we feel proud of. That was what we had with Abdul Kalam. But we did not have those with Congress presidents, like how Indira Gandhi used to appoint, and even Manmohan Singh and Sonia Gandhi did that with Pratibha Patil, right? And similar kind of deal is what we have written to with Modi. So that is another. And then all these institutions, whether CBI, ED, you name it, every government institution is like a puppet under Modi and just taking orders from him, right? That's what it seems like. And so this is the how. And then all these toppling of governments at the state level, once they say if BJP gets more votes, then BJP only can be chief minister, not the other party in one state. And then in the other state they say no matter how many votes BJP gets, the other party guy only will be the chief minister. Playing with all kinds of these kind of things, as well as, even though I don't have majority, I am going to do some heck and crook and whatever, come up with some ways so I can form the government and sit in power. I will topple whoever is there, like for example in Karnataka, or even in other places it has happened, Madhya Pradesh, right? So all these kind of politics. And then appointment of chief ministers, right? Again, more further rubber stamps and buddies of Modi, like for example the Haryana guy, rather than somebody charismatic and some genuine leaders who we can look up to. Maybe some of you may think that Yogi Adityanath is a guy like that. I would disagree on that. We can talk about it later on down the line a little bit, right? So this is the kind of functioning that we have seen under Narendra Modi. Yes, Just like Indira Gandhi, by doing socialism, Indira Gandhi, no matter how the economy would tank, no matter how many more would get poorer and poorer by the day, the number of votes for Indira Gandhi only increased, and her majority only continued to increase in India, and her unquestionability, her level to almost the level of dictatorship only kept on increasing in India. Nobody could question Indira Gandhi. And after death, I think that was probably the best election they had, which they had 400 seats in the parliament. So similar is the case with Modi. With all the socialism, yeah, surely he is increasing his numbers of seats, but India is only becoming worse and worse economically, and going down to returning to socialism, nullifying a lot of reforms and the forward movement that we had done with Narasimha Rao and Vajpayee, and and returning back to the Indira Gandhi model of living. That seems to be what I am seeing. And even in terms of Indira Gandhi used to nationalize everything rather than privatize, right? Modi may not be, he didn't nationalize, but he has done almost nearly the same to nationalization. I will give you examples. When he wanted to do Jandan, sure, go ahead for Jandan. You want to open accounts for the poor, that's not a problem. Nobody is stopping you. Great. But you let the private industry do this, not the government banks. Right? So government banks are already loss making banks. You are taking on more crores and crores of more accounts, which in the end probably will also result in more losses because of the inefficiency of these private government banks, which cannot function properly. Allow capitalism, allow private players to operate in this area, not public players. Same thing with the BEAM app, or there is a dime a dozen of these government started things. So when Modi, I read, wants to open a ride sharing app for two-wheelers run by the government. I am like, are you repeating Indira Gandhi all over again, or what is this? At least today we, on top of it, all this protectionism. Like, I am going to ban all imports of air conditioning and whatnot and this and that, and because we have to allow for domestic industry. Of all the socialistic policies, I feel the most horrible one that we have lived through and suffered immensely under Indira Gandhi is this protectionism. But that seems to be the game of the day, and then everybody is all gung-ho about it. Oh my gosh, this is so amazing, it's so great, this is going to make Swadeshi production. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Have you not seen what the results are? Like, we used to have the Premier, Padmini and Ambassador, only 2 cars in India ever, which were like some ancient models. Are we going to go back to this kind of a world where we protect everything, all imports are banned? I am like, I don't understand where we are headed in this way. This is very disappointing and very opposite of the expectation that we had with Modi. And on top of it, we discussed 2 of the disruptions. One is the demonetization, and the second one was the implementation of GST. All these continuously led to the Indian GDP and Indian economy starting to go down and down from the 5 or 6% they inherited. I guess the quarter before the lockdown, we were down to like 3%, right? Heading straight to a recession, even without the lockdown. If imagine for a second, if it was a normal year 2020 and there was no no lockdown or nothing, business went as usual, chances are we might have printed a 1% or even a negative 0 and minus something percent in a quarter or 2 of this year, even without the lockdown. Right now, add to this kind of a already weak situation. So now Modi returns with a majority in 2019, even larger than the last one. And who does he appoint as the finance minister second term? When now that Mr. Jaitley had passed away, God rest his soul, maybe may he attend the lotus feet of the Lord. So again we had an opportunity to do something right for the economy, but by that time it was clear the economy was going to a serious slowdown. And despite that, we have a Nirmala Sitharaman who is the most charismatic. I just don't know. I don't know if she might have some economic qualifications, but can we not find anybody better in India who has more qualification, more caliber, and more smartness than her in the entire country of 1 billion people? I do not believe that. Maybe they may not belong to BJP. Some are, like for a Subramaniam Swamy, for example. But none of these people are considered. Only sycophants and order takers are what Modi seems to need in his cabinet. Nobody else who can even speak one word, out of their own thinking is allowed. This is what I was referring to, kind of the Indira Gandhi style of functioning. At least now, after lockdown in a severe crisis, when we have entered a recession for the first time since independence, now at least was a time to see that we change and get a really capable and a finance minister whom we can look forward to and expect something from. There is cabinet reshuffle going on. I am hearing in the month of December, but I doubt that Nirmala is going to be changed because Tamil Nadu elections are only a few months away. So he would be not want to upset the voters of Tamil Nadu, obviously. So I don't think that she's going to be changed, and I'm afraid that what the future holds going down this policy, and with a person like her as the incapable almost as the finance minister of India, heading into the future. We'll talk about that shortly after. So this is kind of the performance of the Modi government. So the expectations that we had of Narasimha Rao, Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh, the positives that were going on under them. Under Narasimha Rao, the kind of economic capitalistic reforms, what you call reforms, but they're really introducing capitalism and getting rid of socialism. The kind of disinvestment push under Vajpayee, as well as the the standing up of India, right? Whether it is the nuclear test, whether it is relationship with the world, announcing ourselves in the world stage, whether it is becoming the number one in software. Of course, Narasimha Rao had a lot of contribution in all these two, as well as Bangalore and cities of India being recognized around the world. People visiting India suddenly new, in the 21st century, a new India emerging, right? So these all were the positives under Vajpayee. And under Manmohan Singh, as we discussed, despite a million negatives, the push to infrastructure, the development that we saw where India started looking like and started having infrastructure like almost at par or even better than other places in the world, though even more advanced locations, right? So that we were expecting was going to be taken to the next level, was going to be speeded up, but none of that unfortunately seems to have happened in the 7 years of Modi. In fact, we have gone more towards say Indira Gandhi type of a functioning model, discarding all the developmental models of the last three prime ministers and returning slowly but surely to socialism, to protectionism, to expansion of the government, into all arenas, and to expansion of the freebie schemes into all arenas. So this has been the path that Modi and his team has led India economically, and that obviously can also be seen in the results in terms of the GDP continuing to drop. Of course, yes, the positive is the stock market has not dropped significantly. In fact, when Modi came to power, it was around 24,000 in 2014 May, about in that range, 22 maybe or 24, something like that. The Sensex is what I'm talking about, and today it is almost 44,000, right? So definitely the stock market has gone up despite all these problems in the economy. That's great. It's all the money printing that has continued under Modi, probably at a lesser scale, sure, than under Manmohan Singh, because under Manmohan Singh the stock market went from 2,000 to 22 to 24,000 in his 10 years in office. Right, which was even a more massive money printing, a huge bubble, a huge increase in the real estate prices and stock prices and all the different prices, including food and oil prices. So this is so far as to where we have seen, and unfortunately, I do not have a great feeling in terms of where these type of policies are leading India as we look forward into the next 5 or 10 years going into this government. If we continue on this path that we are on currently of socialism, of repeated intervention in the market, with whether it is with demonetization, GST or lockdown, and what I am talking about the negatives are assuming that corona is over for India and there is not going to be any more lockdowns, because at least in the US or Europe it is really looking bad and there is a second or third wave going on, which is far worse than the first earlier waves. And US, at least maybe given that Biden may be president, is looking like heading to a bigger lockdown, probably even than the last one, given the rate at which the virus is growing. Assuming that nothing of this nature is even needed in India, I still fear that excuse me, I still fear where Modi policies are leading India to. And I feel that the results could be even more disastrous than what we saw under Indira Gandhi and the socialism that she adopted and that she was fostering in India. And this went on for 15, 16 odd years, wherein India eventually went into the balance of payments crisis, where we didn't have any reserves to buy anything from the world, because we were such a protected economy. We did not export anything, we did not really build much, and unemployment was crazy, poverty was rampant, right? And we were a poor, backward country of beggars and snake charmers, which is what people used to think. If you remember the movies that were made in Hollywood in the 80s, right? One that I can remember is a James Bond movie, I forget, maybe Octopussy, right, which was shot in India. So what is the scenes that you have seen in this movie? Or the other one was Indiana Jones, right, and the Temple of Doom with Ambrish Puri in it. So all these movies were depicting only poverty, backwardness, these kind of negative images of India. Whereas look at the movies that are made today, more like, after 2000 and beyond. So where you can see a more vibrant India, India is now stood up to the world stage. It's a complete transformation from 1980s kind of movies, or even before probably, and to what you see about India in the world today in the 2000s and beyond, right? So unfortunately, my fear is we may be going back, if this continues for 5 or 10 years more, to a world of how things were under Indira Gandhi, and probably even worse than that, is what I see as the results coming out of this form of socialism that is being adopted. And yes, after the crisis, we have passed a couple of good bills, which one is the agriculture bill, and one is the which allows some kind of free market, a little bit of free market into the farming and into the farmers' economy, so that they can sell their produce in the open market rather than only to government controlled, government regulated, mandis and whatnot. And similarly, labor laws where a reform wherein private companies can hire and fire as they please. Though it sounds very negative, but that is essential for capitalism. We won't go into the details of why and all that here. That's going to make this video 3 days long. We'll do that another time maybe. So these are some positive reforms that have been done in the middle of a major crisis, but unfortunately these are too little too late in my opinion. And we are headed to a major crisis. As it is, the economy is in really bad shape right now with after this lockdown that we had to enforce. We can discuss merits, demerits. I don't want to go into that too much here. We have done many other videos before about it. Anyway, I hope that corona is over for India. Vaccine is around the corner, and we can give it in time, and before any new waves hit and all that. So even with the current state, I feel that we are headed for major crisis in the Indian economy even in the near term. Now I'm not even talking medium or long term. So I fear that there might be a depression with multiple banks failing one after the other in the coming years, as there is a crisis in terms of the basically, as people are unable to pay their mortgage, or companies are unable to pay their loan installments because their businesses are not running. Though the lockdown is over, I don't think the problems created by the lockdown are over, and they will take years to solve. And if we don't take the right steps now, which I fear the Modi government has, I'm not seeing the seriousness in taking these reforms, making the right capitalistic changes, like how Narsim Rao saved us from the major crisis that we were headed to. I do not see the initiative in the Modi government, to be totally honest, of taking this as a very serious thing. And I would have expected, rather than focusing on, say for example, a love jihad bill which was suddenly passed in such great urgency, that there would be some task force on economics, some really thinking heads coming in. How do we return from minus 10% GDP or whatever it's going to be to plus 10% GDP? What do we need to do? What are the changes to happen? Where is the serious discussion? Where is the conversation on this topic? Who are the experts who are being consulted? Who are the team? Which is the team working on this? I don't see any seriousness in this area. I still see Nirmala Sitharaman as the finance minister doing some tinkering every now and then, some small nuggets of whatever stimulus packages that she brings out, or some off here and off there, and I will give you rebate in this and I will give you rebate in that. I don't think this kind of piecemeal, this kind of small tinkering is what India needs at this point. We need en masse reforms which bring capitalism into every sector of Indian economy, from agriculture to everything, basically manufacturing, whatever it might be. If you want manufacturing, where is the SEZ that we are creating? Take a look at China. Look at the SEZs that they have built. Forget China, look at Africa today. Africa has the knowledge and the thinking as to what is needed for capitalism. They are investing in infrastructure. Look at the new railways built in Africa, rail lines from cities to city. They are investing in mobile technology. They are allowing private companies to revolutionize mobile banking in Africa. They are coming up with SEZs. They are doing, instead of giving free gas that Modi is doing, where you have imported gas from Saudi Arabia or some Gulf country, paying them dollars, and then you want to give it away for free. Instead, there is all the stubble sitting around. Everybody is burning and polluting Delhi. Why can't we take that stubble, create a stove that will burn the stubble for cooking, and it will burn it cleanly, so that way the farmer can sell his product and make some money, as well as there is no pollution, as well as the housewife can cook, buying the stove, using capitalism, not socialism, freebie stuff, and utilize it for their cooking purposes, getting rid of the current stove. This is how Kenya is doing it. There is, if you go to YouTube, you can search for Kenya Clean Stove Project, and you will be able to look at it. So these were the type of capitalistic changes and innovations, and a huge boom of small companies like this, innovating small nugget things and making it into businesses. That was what we were expecting will be starting under Modi. Unfortunately, his policies are instead turned us towards socialism and back to the Indra days, rather than what I call the Nehru-Indra days. The Narendra days are looking more like the Nehru-Indra days, rather than anything that we were expecting in terms of massive, rapid development of India, elimination of poverty, and things like that. Maybe poverty is eliminated by freebies, yeah, probably, but at least not through capitalistic development for sure. Right, so this is at least the economy. So looking forward, what do I see? So one, I see that there is going to be a banking crisis, right, in India in the coming year or two. How big, how small is hard to say, but I feel it is going to be seriously a major one. It is not going to be minor. Yeah, I would say it is almost comparable to the 2008 crisis in United States when large banks started, crashing. Something of that order is what I am expecting. And then in order to bail out all these people, eventually the government is going to have to start printing money, because they're not going to let all the banks fail, right? And in that, when they have to do that, that is going to cause a massive currency crisis, right? So massive inflation, first of all, as you are already seeing, the inflation is going up. So as they have to print more and more money in order to bail out, yes, I am actually appreciating Modi that he has not already gone on and did what America has done and Europe has done, and just printed trillions or borrowed trillions of dollars, printed another few trillions of dollars and just handed it out to everybody. India cannot afford that, and India should not go down that path. But unfortunately, as the crisis gets worse and worse, the pressure on Modi in order to do this kind of steps is only going to continue to increase. And with that, eventually, and then as the banks start failing, like we saw with one or two small banks now, the need for printing will only going to increase, and that's going to cause massive inflation. It's going to cause our currency to come down even further than what it is already against the dollar. Eventually it is going to cause a solvency crisis, right, in terms of the banks, because many of these are again government owned, and we have not done the reform of selling them off, and it's now probably too late and too difficult to do any of it. So in the end, there is going to be, and that solvency crisis may lead to a currency crisis, wherein your rupee or is going to come under question, because the value of it may drop precipitously, and in order to shore up the rupee, there might have to be emergency measures taken, right? And these are the kind of, along with further decline in the GDP, of course, obviously not like how the lockdown type of decline, that is an exceptional event where obviously no economic or hardly any economic activity took place. But I do not see any V-shaped or K-shaped or whatever shaped recovery. I only see a downward trajectory, though it may not be a straight down. It is a slow and move towards down and further, or stay at the bottom, even though if it not not fall down further, but along the bottom is where we will be sailing, with more fear or risk of going further down rather than going further up, unless we make some serious changes to our economic policies, which I am not seeing at this point, at least, as happening in the next couple of years. I don't know beyond that, it's too hard to say, based on how much more crisis we get into and how much more things may become worse. Hopefully that something changes and people realize, and there might be even protest on the streets, as we already see some of the farmers, though I don't know, that's not right, because that's a good bill for capitalistic bill, and this is another problem with India, that you cannot introduce capitalism. It is not going to be accepted easily. Only socialism is the one thing that everybody in India loves and votes for. So as long as you keep them happy with freebies, they will all keep coming back and voting for Modi. And that's what they did to Indira Gandhi and Nehru, and that's what they are likely to do with Modi as well. And Modi is not going to abandon that freebie policies and such socialism either, in order to continue to stay in power. So given this, I see a very bleak economic future, at least in the short, medium to intermediate term for India. And I hope that they change the policies, take this seriously, and make the right moves. But I do not see that happening in the immediate term. But what is more fearing, or what I am more afraid of, is not just the status of the economy. That is a concern, that is a huge issue, yes. But I see bigger issues than that with the Modi government in the way that they are leading the country towards. So what am I referring to? Right? So one is all the agenda against of the RSS and of the BJP, which is anti-Muslim. right? So all we have seen from day one from the Guardian, initially maybe they were a little quiet and not so open about it, but at least in the second term they have been systematically one after the other, triple talaq, now love jihad, next is uniform civil code, and then after that is jansankhya vriddhi, how many kids you can have. So one after the other, the policy, though I support the building of Ram Mandir, which was decided by the Supreme Court, that is excellent, it had to be done. What do you call? We have fought for 500 odd years for this. So I'm not totally opposed to a Hindutva agenda, but I am afraid that it may get into the extreme. And given the fear that as things may get worse, that this government may start fearing that whether are we going to come back again, are we going to get the same number of seats and majority, maybe our majority may reduce, given that they were already losing in some few states. So thinking all this, they may step on the gas in terms of all these anti-Muslim, divisive Hindutva agenda and policies, which could lead to a very big disaster. I am afraid of a disaster happening, given that Owaisi and guys like this are also becoming more hardline, and they are resonating with the people. They are also getting seats now in different elections. So as the more to the right that the BJP drives India, the more these hardliners and all these guys are also going to have their following, and they are also going to stand up and start to resist this. And I do not know, and I'm very afraid of what kind of a result does that bring in the coming future. Hopefully nothing bad and everything settles and things are good, but I fear that this could also be a major challenge. And the third thing, which is even bigger than this, that I fear, is our relationship with our neighbors who are hostile, right? Like obviously I'm talking about Pakistan and China. Yes, we need to be very strong with Pakistan. We cannot compromise with terrorism. There is no question, and Pakistan is not going to fix itself. We know that. They are a failed state, and they are a bent upon jihad state, and we know all these things. And China is expansionist, we know it. Their economy is improving day by day, though now they are having problems, we know that as well. So these are known issues, and of course, but they are trying to influence, China is trying to influence other countries around us like Sri Lanka, Maldives, whoever, Nepal, everybody, even Myanmar. And folks, that is also a given. We understand the expansionism of China. We have seen it back in the 1962 when we had a war. In 1959 they took over Tibet, and in 62 we already lost Aksai Chin to them. So we are aware of what China is, and what the threats from China are. So having understood these threats, India has dealt with them and also continued both initially socialism and development for over 70 years. With China, we have a history of not having a war for over 5,000 years. And at least for the last 50 years, there has not been a bullet fired on the Indo-China border until recently with Galwan, of course. We'll talk about that in a second. And, we had total peace. There were no weapons used ever, and no soldier died. So these equations are changing, and yes, Pakistan terrorism has not stopped, and they're not going to stop. We understand. I'm not advocating that we don't tack to it and we become like a Manmohan Singh and just start pleading with them. But there are other ways to eliminate the terrorism in Pakistan, like how Israel does, right? You can have covert assets. If Pakistani terrorists can cross the border and come to India, why can't raw agents or raw deputed people cross the border and go to Pakistan and just take out these targets, whoever, and finish them off quietly, rather than having to take your army and start a war and all these kind of things. And then, we have these aspirations of getting back POK, Akhand Bharat plan of Modi. And, I don't know when he's going to start executing on these plans. And also now that there is democratic administration is coming in, into power in the United States, we have to become very careful. These people have a history, and this is all they have done, is to try to get two warring parties to fight with each other, and they have this plan in mind already, and I'm sure that they need to counter China, and they need to counter the Islamic terror, and they know that the countries who are with them in this fight today, maybe Israel, maybe Saudi Arabia today against Iran, and countries against China, which are like Japan, South Korea, Australia, these are all, Vietnam, whoever, are very small countries who cannot take on this big challenge. So they are eyeing India as the player, as the big partner, as the person who can take on both China, Pakistan, and all the other Islamic countries and their terror together. So they will be very keen to get Modi into and Modi, Shah, Yogi, whoever is in power over the next, odd 8 or odd 10, 12 years, to start something with these people, so that American troops don't have to be used, and Indian troops will do the job that America wants them to do. Right? So there is a huge fear or huge risk I see, given our existing tensions and given our existing problems with these two countries, that we may go down this path too, which could have multiple disastrous consequences, including a major war, even if it is not nuclear, with thousands or lakhs of people dying. That's one possibility. Forget even thinking about a nuclear war between India, Pakistan, and even a nuclear war between India, Pakistan, and China. And then there is even the possibility of a complete World War III in the neighborhood, with India right in the center, where we have to fight China, Pakistan, and probably even Iran, all three nuclear neighbors one day. So these are some of the bigger, riskier possibilities that I see are also likely. I'm not saying that this will happen, and I'm hoping that it will never happen. But if we go down the wrong path, based on the excitement and the emotions rather than based on sound logic, these are some of the mistakes, the missteps that are possible. So like I titled or in the description of the video, are we headed to Maha Mandi, Maha Danga, and Maha Paramanu Vishwa Yudd? Is this one path that we can follow, or heading towards these three things? To give you an example of who led their countries into these paths, right? That's why I put up some pictures in the description of this video. So we discussed about Indira Gandhi and Nehru type of war or economic policies already. So Indira Gandhi also did one other thing. She had a two-side war with Pakistan. That means two sides of India, right? Bangladesh on the east and Pakistan on the west. And she broke Pakistan into two pieces. Now, Modi wants to obviously one-up Indira Gandhi in popularity. So, is he going to start thinking that, okay, Indira Gandhi broke Pakistan into two pieces, so I have to break Pakistan into four pieces. Right? He can go down this thinking. And obviously take America's help into doing something like that. So this is something that Indira Gandhi did. Nehru did a war with China, and we lost parts of India in that war. And there were similar conflicts like what is going on in Galwan and along the Arunachal Pradesh area, Bhutan area. All these kind of clashes have happened with China under Nehru. Do we want to repeat any of those? So let's talk about, from what I see, we have two models that we can follow, right? So two countries, and we have become close to the United States. So there are two examples right in our neighborhood of countries who got closer to the United States, built a relationship, and how they use that relationship, right? One is what is the China model. So China also started opening up relationships with America, but they used it to improve their economy, to do business, to remove people out of poverty, introduce capitalism, do reforms, and today are the number one or number two, if not the number one, soon to be number one economy in the world, where they have lifted over 600, 800 million people out of poverty and become the manufacturing base of the hub of the whole world. That is one route we can take. On the other route, Pakistan also was very close to the United States. They were one of their non-NATO ally. They, Pakistan used to be the best friend of America even before India was, way before. And what did Pakistan do with this relationship? They started a war with USSR in Afghanistan, listening to America, thinking that this is going to make Pakistan prosperous and a great economy and a great power. And listening to the United States, they created all these jihadi terrorists, these madrasas, and Islam, killing in the name of Islam, and all these problems that we have today in the world, from terrorism, everything has its roots in Pakistan. But those roots were put there by the United States. Right? Pakistan did not come up. Yes, they might have come up with it in a small scale themselves, but they could not make it this big without the help of United States. United States used Pakistan. United States meaning the Democrats who started this war in Afghanistan, joining hands with the Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan to start this war in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. Pakistan would create these madrasas, train these terrorists from all over the Islamic world, and send them to Afghanistan to fight. And these same terrorists later, when that war ended, were also sent into Kashmir. And look at the state of Pakistan today. Look at their economy. Look at their state of terrorism. Look at their government. Look at their people, how they are suffering. We can go down this path too in India. Listen to America or get along with them and start a war with with either Pakistan or with China or with all of them together, which is what America will be most happy with probably. This is another path. Ruin our own country, kill millions of people, lakhs and crores maybe even, and ruin our economy completely, ruin our country. Look at Afghanistan, how much of a ruin it is in even after 50 years after war. So do we want to go down this path? Right? So this is why I put up the picture of Zia-ul-Haq. This is another path we can follow. And then we talked about China. So are we going to follow the China model of development or the Pakistan model of destruction? Right? This is a question that we have a path for Modi to choose from. He can go in this path or in this path as the future of India. Well, not only Modi, including Shah, Yogi, who probably are his successors in the coming next 10 to 12 years. But when we talk of China, even in China there are two models. Originally in 1950, when Mao Zedong, the leader of the Communist Party of China, defeated Chiang Kai-shek and took over and made China a communist country, he followed a different model than the model of development that we are seeing in China today. He followed a communist Chinese model where he introduced communist policies, almost socialistic and communistic policies like Indira Gandhi, and which resulted in deaths and starvation and famine and all kinds of things of millions of people. Like the estimates are 50 to 100 million people were killed under Mao doing socialism. Right? So and I said with Modi socialism, the results can be more disastrous than Indira socialism. So are we looking at a Mao type scenario with crores, lakhs starving? Because we are already there with this lockdown. Many people are in really bad shape. Poverty has returned. It has rampantly increased. So if we again continue the wrong paths, we can do a Mao in India, and there could be mass starvation. There could be Bengal famine like situation, or even worse, that we have only heard of, and hopefully none of us has lived through anything like that, and hopefully none of us will. But that is a risk possible. And not only did Mao do this internally within China, he also started wars with all kinds of neighbors all the time, including the 1962 war with India. This was under Mao Zedong. He was the one who started this expansionist policy. He was the guy who grabbed Tibet, though it was an autonomic region in 1959. He has done this with Mongolia. He has done this with all over the place. He is the guy. Mao Zedong is the guy who grabbed Aksai Chin in the 1962 war. So do we want to go down a Mao Zedong kind of policy with India, that kind of Chinese model? Or there is the next guy who came after Mao Zedong, who is Deng Xiaoping, who is at the bottom picture after Narasimha Rao in this video, right? So he was the reformer in China. He abandoned socialism. He stopped all these warring policies, and he said, no, we need to develop the economy first before we do any war and all this kind of nonsense. So he stopped this whole thing, and he did the economic reforms needed for China to grow at 10% GDP for 20-30 years, to be the world's factory, to be the world number one economy. All these reforms and development are because of Deng Xiaoping, who is not recognized. Most people don't know who he is even. But everybody knows Mao, everybody knows Zia-ul-Haq, most likely, at least Indians, and they know Indira Gandhi for sure. So the people who are recognized are these kind of bad folks, and similarly the folks who are at the bottom picture are all such developers in India who developed their countries. The next person is Lee Kuan Yew, who is the Prime Minister of Singapore. Right, he was almost a dictator there, and many of these in Asia are dictators. Unfortunately, like we discussed, in a democracy, you can only do socialism. That's when you come back to power. So maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say this, but does India need a dictator also in order to do capitalism and do development? Because every time somebody tried to do capitalism, like the Narasimha Rao, Vajpayee, a S.M. Krishna or a Chandrababu Naidu, they lost election within the first term. But the guys who did socialism, like Nehru, Indira Gandhi, now Modi, keep coming back with bigger and bigger, more and more votes. So in any case, so the folks who you see at the bottom pictures, Lee Kuan Yew is one, and then we have Maktoum of Dubai. Dubai was a small fishing village where there was hardly anything. It was probably poorer than India even 20-25 years ago. There is no oil in Dubai. And look at what he has built in Dubai in the last 20 plus years, focusing primarily on development, capitalism, and the such right policies. If you look at Dubai, Dubai is now better than New York or almost any city in the entire world. Same way, the last person on the right is Park Lee, I guess. It's a South Korean name. It's hard to pronounce. He was the dictator of South Korea, who again brought in capitalism under dictatorship, built South Korea, developed it into one of the most advanced nations on the planet today. I know it's a small country, but still, it rules the world. Look at Samsung. All of us probably are most familiar with Samsung and Hyundai. These are products which a small tiny dot on the map is what South Korea is. And Japan was already huge. They're killing Japan like crazy. They're even killing the US, in semiconductors and stuff like that. That is what this guy built South Korea into. So is Modi going to be a reformer, a developer, a capitalist, a guy of this kind who is going to stop all these Danga fasad, anti-Muslim, anti-divisive stuff, and starting wars with neighbors and all such policies, and follow the Deng Xiaoping China model and develop India? If we are so developed, then who is Pakistan and who is China to us? They can't touch us. They will be shitting in their pants before thinking of doing anything to India. If you look at Pakistan, we were 4 times the size of Pakistan, our economy, like in 1990. Today we are over 10 times the size of Pakistan. What can Pakistan do to us? Similarly is the case with China. If we can improve our economy at 10% for the next 10 or 20 years, we are going to beat America. Forget China. Right, so that is the way to counter Chinese aggression and to counter Pakistani Islamic terrorism and everything. And even the problem of Muslims in India, the solution is economics. Solution is development. Everybody is only looking for food, job and things like that. There might be a few miscreants, I'm not disagreeing, but those can be handled. As long as the masses have jobs, have food, have prosperity, I don't think this Islamism and all these are going to be bigger problems. And even if they become, then they can be handled better with a developed economy than they can be in a suffering socialistic place like what we used to be, say, for like Indra's India. I hope we are not returning to that under Modi. And then there are a couple more people I have put in the pictures of that we wanted to mention. One is, Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, and Hitler on the other picture. So these are two extremes, you can say, of one of socialism and another of hating division inside the country, as well as starting wars with neighbors. Right, so I hope that we don't get to these extreme examples. Look at what Hugo Chavez has done to Venezuela. Right, all the folks on the top are highly popular leaders. Of course, some are dictators, but many came to power through through elections, and they were popular and they have ruled for over 15 years. Each one of them who is on the top of the picture, right? Unlike the ones in the bottom. They ruled, they're very popular amongst their people. They ruled for 15 plus years, but all they did is ruin their countries. And Hugo Chavez, Venezuela was a rich and prosperous country. They were the Saudi Arabia of South America. They had so much oil. And all he did is introduce all kinds of socialistic policies, freebies here, freebies there, freebies everywhere. Compare, nothing, 10 times probably that of Indira Gandhi. And eventually today people are starving for food in Saudi Arabia now that oil prices have crashed and there is no money despite all these oil riches. Venezuela is in misery. Right? That is what Chavez accomplished with socialism. And we all know what Hitler accomplished with. Though Hitler was a great patriot, he was like the most ardent German that you can think of, who wanted Germany to be number one. And everybody was crazy about his speeches in Germany, and they even voted him to power, right? He didn't come through a coup or something like in Pakistan. He came to power. He's a civilian. He's not a military guy. He might have served in the military, but he's not like a military general like a Zia-ul Haq or something, who only started to wear military uniform later. But what did he do? Yes, he did some economic development in Germany initially. But look at what he has done to the Jews in Germany. Look at what he has done in Europe, starting a major war, a world war. Right? These are, again, like I said, extreme examples of how things could go wrong if we go down the wrong path with Modi, Shah, Yogi. And then there is another one which some people again hail as big hero, which is FDR, who is again a massive socialist. And what did he do? He took a small economic problem that was there, a stock market crash, and made it into the greatest depression. Thanks to socialism, thanks to Keynesianism, which America endured for over 15-20 years. And he ignored the rise of Hitler in Europe, though America was like a major power by then. Unlike, Britain was going down though, but the United States was rising up. And he then engulfed America and the whole world into a world war, killing millions and millions of people. And then later on, his VP was the guy who even nuked Japan, the first guy to ever use a nuclear weapon in the whole world. So these are the kind of atrocities. And then the same guy also started Cold War with the Soviet Union after the World War. So these are the kind of, and this is the legacy of the successor of FDR. So not only did they ruin America with socialism, that is kind of when I would say that the decline of America started, though it took a long time. People thought that America is very wealthy and prosperous in 1945 after World War II. It is true, not because of FDR, but because of capitalism that America had done from the 1800s all the way till then. All that FDR was doing was putting the initial nails in the coffin of the ruin of America by doing social security like SSN, all kinds of socialist schemes came in. They made the depression longer, than it would have otherwise been. Right, and he did all kinds of Keynesianism, getting devaluing the dollar, trying to get off the gold standard, and started World War. He didn't start it really, but allowed it to get started, and then got the whole country into it, eventually leading to millions of deaths, as well as leading to dropping nuclear bombs in Japan. This is the what do you call, the legacy of FDR, though some still hail him as a great hero among the Democrats in America. Really, he was a villain too. He may not be as bad as Hitler, but nothing less. Right? So, would we want to go down these paths in India? Because there is a very likelihood, even a risk, I would say it's a 50-50 which way we are going, and it is more leaning towards the top half, top kind of pictures, rather than the bottom people that are there on the cover of this video, right? So we seem to be headed in the direction of where the top listed people had taken their countries to. Similarly, is what I am seeing is where Modi, Shah, Yogi are unfortunately taking India today, which could lead to Maha Mandi, Maha Danga, and Maha Paramanu Vishwa Yudd. At least Maha Paramanu Yudd, if not Vishwa Yudd. Hopefully that is not the case, and I will be proven wrong, and we will turn the clock, and more things will change tomorrow or next year with Modi and his cabinet or his successors. Hopefully something somewhere, and we turn instead to the path that the people who are at the bottom of the video image took their countries to. We abandoned this current path, socialism, wars with neighbors, divisions within the country, and all these, and start focusing only purely on economic development as the primary thing, as a poor country that is India, with such great potential, such great history, such great culture, everything, and we start working towards earning our due spot as the real developed country, the number one country in the world, with avoiding all these wars and dangas and whatnot, all kinds of stuff under Modi and under democracy itself, rather than having to have a revolution later while we go down the wrong path with causing all these three Mahas, and then somebody else having to come and throw these people out and take over the country. Hopefully, I feel it's going to have to be a dictatorship, because like we discussed, in India, it is very hard to do capitalism in a socialistic or in a democracy, because only socialism sells in democracy, and the guy who promises the maximum freebies is the guy who gets the votes, whether it is AAP or whether it is Congress or whether it is Third Front or BJP, does not matter. Finally, freebies win. Right, rather than if we have to do development like how China did, how Dubai did, how Singapore did, how South Korea did, every country in Asia has only developed under a dictator. There is not a single example in the entire continent of Asia where a country developed under democracy. You can say Israel is an example, but Israel is really people from Europe, though of course they were originally Asian, but they really spent their time in Europe. So I would not count Israel as an example. Other than that, there is not a single country in Asia that is developed under a democracy. Right? And unfortunately, the way Asian people are, we can go into another video for that. I do not think the democracy is suitable for Asia, is my honest opinion. So hopefully we don't have to do that, and India can disprove my opinion and become the country which develops and becomes a superpower under democracy and under Modi, Shah, Yogi's leadership. I hope that is the future of India, rather than the three Mahas, and then somebody, a dictator or another leader, or I don't know, a democratic leader, whichever, somebody else having to come and replace. And still we are yearning for the future, yearning for the Achhe Din, and struggling and suffering, and still looking forward for somebody to deliver India even after these three people have ruled India for 20, 30, whatever number of years, and only things have not improved. I hope we are not in that situation. And so let's hope for the best, but also be cautious and not be completely naive about the other possibilities that also exist into the way things can go. And I feel that in the next couple of years or so, this will start really getting to be more clearer to folks as they see where the economy is headed, where this Hindu Muslim stuff starts heading, as well as where the conflict on the border and with the neighboring countries, all these start heading. Are they going to head to a disaster type scenario, or are they going to start getting better and better, and economy picking up and things improving? Let's see. We shall wait and see what the future will be looking like. So with that, I think we have spent a lot of time analyzing, discussing. So this should be good content, sufficient content for this video, and we can talk more in future videos. Thank you. Please feel free to give me your feedback, comments, like, share, subscribe, and also hit the bell icon so we can get updated when I make new videos of this nature. Thank you.